Hello everyone. For this drive, we are heading west on Highway 50. We're starting off several miles west of County Road 225 where Suzanne's bike was found. And while we're enjoying this drive, I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the clips from Dr. Phil that I saw on YouTube and the 3 Plunder videos about the Dr. Phil video that I saw today. Plunder did an excellent job, and I think I've got a pretty good idea of what all went on Dr. Phil. I don't actually have access to the Dr. Phil show itself. But in the clips I saw, the Profiling Evil guys mentioned that Suzanne was not a high risk for anything happening to her from a stranger, that she was a low risk victim, and I have to sort of disagree on that a little bit, because Suzanne was a very loving, kind, and helpful woman who liked to help others that were in need, including helping women who were in bad situations, the victims of domestic problems. And a lot of times in those type cases, the perpetrator will lash out at the person who is helping their person that they feel is their property, helping them get out from underneath their thumb. They will often lash out at those that are in the way of them continuing with their patterns. I do agree that an animal attack is not likely with no mess. And I always was sort of thinking, what the heck, when hearing that a bobcat was a legitimate theory regarding an adult person being completely disappeared. But then I was also thinking, well, maybe there's evidence of this. But when there turned out not to be any sort of evidence of an attack, I knew that it couldn't be an animal, because any of the animals that do attack would definitely leave some sort of signs. Or as Dr. Phil said, there would be a mess. A random person is not as likely statistically as the husband, but I would not say that a random person is out of the question. And someone known to her could be either her spouse or someone that she knew, and I think that any of that is a possibility. I also, especially after going down there and checking it out, believe that that bike was never ridden down that bank. I totally agree with that. There's also barbed wire down there. There would be definitely signs of something down there. Torn clothing, some flesh or blood or hair. I was also really surprised to hear that Barry was on the road to Broomfield at 4 a.m. that Sunday. That's the first I ever heard of that. But that meant that he could not have seen Suzanne at 5 a.m. if he was already on the road to Broomfield at 4. But also, if he was on the road at 4, he couldn't have spent the night in Broomfield either, which is something else that I had heard in the case. And I guess those are just details that we'll find out about if he ever is charged. And if not, I guess they don't really matter, except for trying to set a timeline for when was the last time Suzanne was honestly accounted for. Also, if Barry was on the road to Broomfield at 4 a.m. and that on 4 p.m. Saturday afternoon he and Suzanne were seen in town getting a sandwich together in town, 4 p.m. Saturday, that would mean that the noise of the equipment that was heard by the neighbor on County Road 105 on Friday night didn't have anything to do with Suzanne, because that occurred the night before she was seen in town having a sandwich with Barry. So I guess that whole location was probably just a red herring. I also found it very odd to hear that Suzanne friended guys Andy's age on Facebook around midnight on Saturday, between Saturday and Sunday, which could either indicate that somebody else was on her Facebook, or maybe she was just busy friending people that she hadn't befriended yet that were on her Facebook wall, and maybe they just happened to be male. I don't know if we should read anything into that or not, but it's something to, file under Anyway, we learned that Andy's theory was that Suzanne was killed at home and moved someplace else, and that's regardless of whether it's Barry or anybody else, that's what he considers happened. He says he hopes it wasn't Barry, but I can tell that he's probably leaning toward that it is. And I don't remember if it was on Plunder or if it was on Dr. Phil. I think it was on Plunder that somebody mentioned Cassidy Cordova and saying that he was a former employee of Barry's, but I went and peeked at his Facebook again, and he's still listing Barry's landscaping company as one of his employers. I also got to hear for the first time some more of the background on that story of that photograph of Barry laying on the ground during the first search for Suzanne, and they said that he was also heaving and crying. And I agree with what Plunder's saying, is that he was probably feeling grief, but that doesn't mean that he was innocent. Even if he was guilty and was feeling remorse, he would be having a real heartfelt cry about it, because I have no doubt that he did love Suzanne, and I have no doubt that he is very upset that she's not here now. Now, whether he's the cause of that or not, I don't know. And by being the cause, he could either be the perpetrator, or somebody could have been wanting revenge on Barry. There's a lot of different possibilities, but I do admit that statistically speaking, people look at the partner. And it is true also that Barry has a lot of excuses, and that he does say that law enforcement has botched this investigation. I'm trying to be patient, but sometimes when I'm really frustrated, I tend to think that he might be right. Next up, I was listening to what people were interpreting about the way he spoke to Tyson Draper in his video where he was speaking to Barry, and Barry was using we, about we thought this, we thought that. And I know that a lot of people do use plurals when talking in that kind of situation. I do, because I'm usually talking about things with other people, and then when I discuss it with someone else, I will say what we as a group came up with as a possibility. And when he was speaking to whoever had Suzanne in his little 26-second, I think it was, video, he called for they, and he would give whatever they want. But I don't think that they necessarily means more than one person. Some people use it just when they mean a person unknown to them. Anyway, then about the job in Broomfield, I got an email from someone else that let me know that I was barking up the wrong tree by looking to RTD for answers, because it turns out that while it would be an RTD location that's under the Colorado Department of Transportation, and that's who I need to contact to find out whether or not Barry was a contractor for them and whether he did work there in May. And as for where Suzanne could be if she was taken to another location, I've heard people wonder whether she could be on the road to Broomfield, and I have gone up and down the 285, and there are lots of public lands there, and so I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility. But I'd also like to point out that the 285 goes in both directions, as does Highway 50. She could be in any direction, and depending on when it was that she actually was taken, alive or not, there could be a lot of miles that she could be. If she was taken somewhere along Highway 50, though, I would suspect more that it would be in the westerly direction because it's less populated to the west. And then I know that there was a lot of talk about how Barry's not talking and not doing interviews, not going on camera, and it does seem suspicious, but he could have good reasons too. It could be that he's not a very likable guy and not well received. He could have poor communication skills. And then I was thinking again about the dog hits, especially after listening to Plunder talk about it and wonder about it. And that got me thinking about, were they hitting on the rocks? And if they were hitting on the rocks, where did those rocks come from? Are they from the location where they are, or were they brought from someplace else? And what if there's somebody else's remains? Because I know that the law enforcement keeps saying that it's not related to Suzanne Morphew, but they didn't actually say that there was no evidence at all. I am not going to forget about Suzanne. I am going to keep following her case, and every time that I'm out in the wilderness, which I often am, I'm going to be mindful of my surroundings, and if I see anything, I will contact law enforcement. I have no doubt that her case will be solved. In 1980, a woman disappeared from Salida. Her name was Beverly England, and her case is still not solved, but they're still working on it. In 1992, bones were found on Mount Chavano, and in 2015 they finally had the technology to positively identify those bones as Beverly England's. And in October of 2018 there was another search conducted by the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, which resulted in finding more evidence in Beverly's case. Thank you for watching Another Day in the Car. We are up here on the top of Monarch Pass, Continental Divide. Elevation 11,312 feet. I hope you enjoy the view, and I'll see you in the next video.